All right, everybody, welcome back. And by the way, happy Friday. The radical Democrats are bored out of their freaking minds now that they're done fear-mongering about the 2024 election. They're turning over every stone possible to come up with new ways to make the country worse. Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro, one of the most deranged radical lunatics in America, just doubled down on one of her most insane requests during her latest round of complaints. Before I roll the clip, just look at Miss Rosa DeLauro. Well, that's a face that screams, I'm a liberal. Folks, if you're listening on radio right now, I gotta say, like maybe she's probably 70 years old or so with this really weird bob haircut. And these funky green glasses. This looks like a miserable person. That's a face that screams liberal, I'll say. A woman who is always angry about some radical dream she has. She looks like the antagonist in a witch movie. She really does. Dresses like a Willy Wonka character. Why on earth would anyone take her seriously, let alone vote her into office to represent the people, the good people of Connecticut? She's been preaching the same BS since 1991. I'd say finding a replacement for her, Miss DeLauro, is long overdue. Anyway, listen to what she's bitching about right now.
You also plan to make important investments to address the roadway safety crisis, including the critical funding that would accelerate the development, and this is an area I've written to you about, of the use of female dummies in crash testing. This will start to fight the gender inequity among vehicle safety and crash victims. This budget also builds upon and helps actualize.
Yeah, you actually heard that right. You actually heard that right. So you mean to tell me the same party that can't define what a woman is now pushing for female crash dummies for what she calls, quote, road equity. Road equity, crash dummies. It's not just the male versions of crash dummies. Yeah, get some females. Best part is when this ultimately happens, guess who's going to pay for it? That's right, you and me. We got plenty more to discuss, so as always, let's react. Last day of the week, today. Final time we all wake up and go to work until Monday. Fridays are cherished by the American people. For Joe Biden, Fridays represent one final chance to do something stupid with the hopes that nobody will report on it. As we all slept, our crooked president and his drunken failure VP decided to forgive another $4.3 billion in student loans last night, bringing their grand total to nearly $180 billion. For Joe Biden, this is a legacy play. I would expect another sweeping cycle of loan forgiveness before he's booted out of the White House once and for all. This may be one of the only things old Joe has done well: give away your money. He wanted to be remembered for something, for forgiving loans, and he sure will be, but not for the reason he thinks. Biden will be remembered for breaking the rules and defying the Supreme Court. He'll be remembered spitefully by the countless Americans who worked 2 or 3 jobs to pay their loans, to pay their taxes, send their tax money in. They did it the right way, and old Joe, no knight in shining armor. He's enabling and funding laziness and government dependency, 2 things that make our country worse. And let's not forget, folks, the Supreme Court said, Joe, you can't do this. You're not allowed to do this. You're spending the people's money without an act of Congress. You can't do that. He's doing it anyway, folks, as Crooked Joe pardons the world, hands out your tax dollars to baristas at Starbucks. There's a very scary trend that seems to be escalating in Joe's idea of the United States. We've all been closely watching the aftermath of that United Healthcare CEO's assassination. The creepy TikToks, the wanted signs with the X through that man's name with other CEOs on walls waiting to be assassinated, the internet threats and public plans for future attacks. Folks, this is terrorism, domestic terrorism from within. An angry generation of silver spoon-fed liberals are tweeting and blogging about how they would love to have the blood of a CEO on their own hands. We shouldn't be surprised when more of these attacks happen. The deranged lunatic animals on the left have been telling us their intentions all along. You know what we say? When they say they're going to do something bad, believe them. And with that said, I'm sure you won't be surprised to learn that we have our first alleged copycat attack. 32-year-old Nathan Mahoney of Michigan decided he was going to try and kill his company's president during a staff meeting. Eric Denslow, the head of Anderson Express, a Michigan-based manufacturing company, is in serious but stable condition right now after that sadistic lunatic decided to try and take the CEO's life. Authorities are scrubbing all of the guy's socials, looking for any possible connection to Luigi Mangione, the assassination of Brian Thompson from United Healthcare. If I were to guess, they're going to find something. Similarities are eerie. This happened during a freaking staff meeting in broad daylight, presumably with other people nearby. We obviously don't know the full story just yet, but this is one to keep an eye on, given the sheer number of internet thugs and morons who are promising to follow in Mangione's footsteps. There are actual protests happening on American soil right now where people are somehow advocating for Mangione's freedom. Look at these lunatics. And folks, if you're listening on radio, there's picketing, they're signing Free Luigi, the murderer who shot someone on a Manhattan street, dead of day, right in the back. Well, these folks are dressed like trick-or-treaters, waving flags that beg for the freedom of a bloodthirsty murderer, Luigi. How on earth did we get here? Well, speaking of protests, a caravan of government-leeching invaders decided to grab megaphones and flags to protest Donald Trump and the border czar, Tom Homan. This is really laughable because these greedy animals have no rights in their own countries. What makes them think that they have the right to protest the law in our country? They're not citizens. They can kick and scream all they want, but when Trump gets into office, he and Homan are sending them all right back home. Trust me, he doesn't care about their tears and their complaints. He cares about the unmeasurable damage that these people have caused to the country. The animals will not run the zoo under our next president. They did under the current president. And that has been made abundantly clear. This outspoken caravan isn't alone. There's another massive herd of migrants marching towards the United States through Mexico. They all want in before Trump gets elected. They think that by sneaking in now before the inauguration, they'll somehow be able to seamlessly assimilate into society completely unmarked. While that may be true today with Biden's world and Kamala Harris's border czar world, maybe even tomorrow, but it truly doesn't matter once Trump gets into office. Hopefully these animals don't unpack their bags for too long because Homan, he's going to be shipping them out in waves beginning, my guess, late afternoon on January 20th. With the holidays upon us, some Americans have decided to take the word gay from Christmas songs far too literally. Listen to this.
Here's a little hack to stop your parents from misgendering you this holiday season. So say you're at a family event and your parents misgender you in front of everyone. Simply release all of the piss and shit in your body onto the floor. Start pissing on the floor. Start shitting on the floor. And when your family's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Just go, my parents never taught me how to piss or shit in the toilet, so I have to piss and shit on the carpet. And all the carpet's covered in piss. And all the couches are covered in shit. And I can't have roommates because they say I'm too stinky to live with because my parents never taught me how to piss or shit in the toilet. Your parents will think it's far more embarrassing to have a child that can't shit or piss in the toilet than one that's transgender. Happy holidays.
I apologize for having you listen to all that. Shut the front door, you lunatic nut job. That was a dude with long hair and a dress talking, by the way, folks, if you're on radio. What the hell has this country come to? That maniac is talking about, quote, a little hack not to get misgendered at Christmas. I got a little hack for you, sir. Don't care if you're wearing a dress and a wig, or that's your hair, who cares? Instead of defecating on your parents' floor, why don't you get in the car, take a little drive to the nearest mental institution, slip right into a straitjacket. Don't worry, they're gender neutral. Once you're nice and cozy, let the kind doctors study your brain so we can all take one little step closer to fewer of yous in society. Yeah, I said that. Oh yeah, happy holidays to you, you freak. In 2021, Goya launched Goya Cares, a global initiative to protect children and educate children on mental health. Goya Cares is providing schools and community centers with a preventative education curriculum and a free assembly that includes the viewing of the Goya Cares Press Pause short film. Press Pause is intended to raise awareness regarding mental health issues, abuse, and bullying among children, teens, and in our communities. Press Pause is an educational film following 15-year-old Sofia Rodriguez as she navigates adolescence, self-doubt, and an abusive relationship amid her parents' turbulent divorce. Set within the cultural context of her Hispanic family, the film explores her discomfort with unwanted attention from her uncle and the pressures of maintaining a facade of perfection in high school. It introduces the Press Pause campaign, promoting kindness and advocacy, highlighted by Sophia leaving a note saying, "You matter," for a bullied peer. The film encourages open family communication about mental health and culminates in Sophia's transformative realization of her right to seek help through the power of empathy and small acts of kindness. Press Pause displays the importance of being proactive in supporting one's community and underscores the critical importance of self-advocacy. Okay, folks, time for today's Truth Bomb. All right, let's take a look at this video. Here's what they're talking. The internet is ablaze right now. There's I guess a theory or a rumor going around that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are headed back to the White House, and there's a reason for this. And I'm reading off X. This is the General _O. Biden and Harris have returned to the White House. There are rumors that they're planning on invoking the 25th Amendment just to make Kamala Harris president for 30 days. Are the Democrats planning on Kamala Harris giving Joe Biden a pardon for his entire political career? So the theory is they go back, Joe steps aside via the 25th, Kamala, this is important, she'll only be the acting president. She won't be the actual president. She'll be the acting president, could therefore then likely, maybe constitutionally, not sure, pardon Joe Biden for all his crimes. Not sure if it's going to go down. The way it would have to go, though, Section 3 of the 25th Amendment, if I may, if the president, Biden, voluntarily declares in writing to the president pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives that he or she is unable to discharge the powers and duties of the office, the vice president becomes the acting president. The president can assume duties, again, by declaring otherwise in writing. And just to make this a little highlight this, the vice president does not become the president, but rather the, quote, acting president until the situation changes according to the procedures outlined in the 25th Amendment. This distinction means that the vice president steps into the role temporarily without being officially declared as the president of the United States. How about this, you two? Get the hell out of the Oval Office and go home, Joe. Go eat your ice cream, and Cammie, go find a bar somewhere. Just get out of our way. Truth bomb, folks. So picture this crazy story. Allow me, and let me just work with me here for a minute. The president, kind of an asshole, attends one of your run-of-the-mill swampy events on Capitol Hill, speaking to a room full of donors and lobbyists who want nothing more than to get in on the D.C. action, no doubt. It's a photo opportunity that these jackals have probably paid the president many hundreds of thousands of dollars for. The president leaves the event, but actually a decoy heads back to the White House while the actual president, again, kind of an asshole, goes to another location to sleep with a member of his staff. Sounds very Clintonian, in fact. And suddenly, in the middle of the act, the president, the actual president, suffers a very serious and very debilitating stroke, the kind you simply do not recover from. Uh-oh, we can't risk anyone finding out because we still have our agenda to jam through the American people, say his nefarious inner circle of power-hungry swamp vultures. So what does this shifty chief of staff do? Well, they find the body double, someone who coincidentally looks exactly like the president, to step in. To be clear, he doesn't actually have to do anything particularly presidential. He just needs to walk around, go in, go out of the White House, and wave at the unsuspecting people and journalists, just enough to convince the American people that there's a warm body in the White House. All is fine with the world on the left. There's the president. Well, what about his wife, you might ask? Is the first lady in on it? Well, actually, she's not actually in on it. You see, she and her husband, the president, have essentially been leading separate lives due to the fact that, number one, he's kind of an asshole. Number two, he's kind of a cheating asshole. She holds up her side of the pact. She sometimes attends events with her husband, the president, waves her hand, and then retreats into her own bedroom at the White House. Imagine how insane it is to just have your way with the American people like that, to know the actual president is completely incapacitated somewhere over here on life support, to lie to the whole country day in and day out. How would that even be possible? Well, that whole synopsis I just ran through is the center of the movie Dave, 1993 movie Dave, starring Kevin Kline and Sigourney Weaver. The real life version of that movie is a whole lot worse. Actually, you see, in the real life version of that crappy movie, the president is actually known for decades of corruption. Our guy. And fancy little things like plagiarism and racism, among other things. But that doesn't matter to anyone, you see, because it's apparently also, it doesn't matter that this man is in a very obvious and fast mental and cognitive decline. I mean, what's the difference? He's either has a stroke sleeping with a staff member, or he's literally degenerating in front of our own eyes. It's the same thing. Whether Jill knew or not, of course she knew. All that matters is that he can beat Donald Trump. Just prop someone up to beat Donald Trump, the state enemy number one. And so one of the most treasonous and most heinous and dangerous cover-ups in modern political history will ensue, except it's not a movie. It's very much real life, and we've lived through it. And we're actually still living through it. So let's get into it. Fact, we have not had a president in 3, maybe 4 years. We've always known that the entire story would come out and come to a head. You see, outside of the legacy media, where they protect him, we've all seen, heard, and known what was happening to our president. Words were slurred. Falls were made. There were the infamous note cards, "You are in the Oval Office," quoting, or "The bathroom is down the hall. You are the president." We've seen those note cards. We've seen them on camera. Biden taking that short stairs of Air Force One after battling the big boy stairs one too many times. The massive fall on that stage during the Air Force graduation ceremony back in 23, where he tripped over nothing, but they claimed it was something. We called it out repeatedly, and the legacy media, the entire leftist machine, engaged in a cover-up for the ages. And now finally, amidst flying drones, frenzies, and the Capitol Hill showdowns over spending bills and shutdown chatter, the first of no doubt many reports comes out on the front page of the Wall Street Journal detailing just how deep and treasonous and disgusting the cover-up of Joe Biden's declining mental condition actually was. What we're finding out is unbelievably crazy, folks. There's no doubt in my mind that this is just the beginning. It all started when Joe Biden made the decision to run against President Donald Trump. They painted him as this big hero, political beacon, righteous, Barack Obama's bro, his comrade in arms, so to speak, except that we already understood early that something wasn't quite right with Joe. Why didn't we see him so much? Jill Biden did a massive chunk of his campaigning for that 2020 cycle. Something his aides were concerned about could actually highlight Joe's limited capacity or energy to do so, to campaign, a sign of things to come. Well, in the Wall Street Journal piece titled "How the White House Functioned with a Diminished Biden in Charge," they detail how visitors were told to keep meetings, quote, focused. In other words, keep them short. His interactions with the senior people like Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin or Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen became more and more rare. And here's the thing, absolute kicker. They couldn't get the president's ear at key moments. I'm quoting, quote, "They couldn't get the president's ear at key moments, including ahead of the U.S.'s disastrous pullout from Afghanistan." This is the Wall Street Journal reporting, and basically they've talked to 50 people. Top Biden advisors were forced to carry out tasks that the president should have been able to carry out himself. People like National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, his National Economic Council head. They were actually fulfilling the duties of the commander-in-chief, who was literally asleep on the job. But wait, there's more. Press aides were putting together news clips for Joe that left out any negative stories about Joe, meaning that while we, the non-legacy media, were calling out the obvious senile moments, like when he called out for a dead congresswoman at a press conference, remember this?
Representative Jackie, are you here? Where's Jackie? I didn't think she was going to be here to help make this a reality.
I mean, Jackie here. Jackie died the week before, and he knew it. This was an event in Jackie's district. So that moment, you realize someone told him, Mr. President, don't mention Jackie. She's passed. We're in her district. Don't mention her. He couldn't remember that. The Times, I know, we actual journalists and truth tellers, we pointed out that these moments are getting worse and worse. We analyzed them for what they were, representative of a president in obvious decline. The big guy knew nothing at all about what was going on. And they made him look even dumber by leaving out how badly he was polling with the American people, which maybe explains moments like this one.
Poll also found that based in part on what's transpired in the last week, the majority of Americans, forgive me, I'm just the messenger, no longer consider you to be competent, focused, or effective at the job.
I haven't seen that poll.
It's out there from CBS this morning. What would you say to those Americans who no longer believe they
Look,
can do the job?
I had a basic decision to make. I either withdraw America from a 20-year war that, depending on whose analysis you accept, cost us $150 million a day for 20 years or $300 million a day for 20 years, and I carry this card with me every day, and who, in fact, where we lost 2,448 Americans dead and 20,722 wounded.
You know, so if you don't tell the man he's disaster polling, he goes out there and says, you don't know what you're talking about. Meanwhile, the polls were saying he was 38% right before Kamala Harris took over. He's down to 34%. It's a record low for modern presidents. It's insane that they kept that information from him because he kept going out looking like an absolute moron. And I said, maybe explains it. Maybe. After all, as equally as Joe Biden is degenerative, he's also a well-known perpetual liar. Biden's the king of disinformation, as I've often referred to him in the past. We've all seen the images of the pack of aides flanking Joe Biden to cover up his old man gait. They literally started to realize how old he looked when he talked, so they got on either side of him and walked him from the White House to Air Force One, walked him from the White House to Marine One to make sure the reporters' cameras weren't picking up how literally he was almost about to trip and fall every single time. Make sure he didn't wander off like he's done so many times before. The literal hand-holding was apparently well beyond what anyone had ever seen before inside the White House. And yet, they pressed on with the re-election bid. I mean, they got away with it once before in 2020. They were just deluded enough to think they would get away with it again from his campaign, from his basement once again. Except that was before the Afghanistan withdrawal, massive inflation, an illegal migrant crisis, rampant crime, and an exposure of the Biden family corruption, among so many other things. And before the June debate with President Trump, well, that made the obvious truth finally undeniable, even to the leftist media machine, to the Democrats, the propaganda media who just couldn't possibly cover it up any longer. They insisted again and again that Joe Biden was alert and good as ever before.
But comparing that guy's mental state, I've said it for years now, he's cogent. But I undersold him when I said he was cogent. He's far beyond cogent. In fact, I think he's better than he's ever been. Intellectually, analytically.
So maybe I'll get Joe Scarborough a thesaurus, because cogent, better, those aren't words you describe Joe Biden. Those aren't words you describe late-term Joe Biden especially. The guy was on his ass. He was losing it. And now we know, based on 50 separate sources by the Wall Street Journal, that aides inside knew that he was degenerating at a rapid pace, and they were hiding it anyway. Those outside of the propaganda machine saw it plain in sight. We did. His slurring, his needing to be led on and off stages, his falls, they were the source of laughs in comedy skits around the world. We became a laughingstock because the leader of the free world, the commander-in-chief, actually had very little command of what was going on. He didn't have command of his own walking, talking. His mind was shot, is shot. And Wall Street Journal, again, based on interviews with nearly 50 people, has lifted the lid off this truth ever so slightly. Just lift the lid a little bit because there's a lot more in there, smoldering, heating up. Apparently, he had good days and bad days. Think about that. As if we can afford to have a president and commander-in-chief who has bad days at all. They had to repeat instructions to him, like where to enter or exit a stage. He apparently couldn't even remember lines his team talked to him about just prior to delivering them. They tried everything they could to prevent gaffes, but seems like moments like this one were completely unavoidable.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin.
You think that's bad? President of Ukraine being Putin? Think that's bad? How about this one?
I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, so I think she was not qualified to be president.
Vice President Trump. I mean, where are you? Vice President Trump. How do you even get there? I mean, Vice President, your own Vice President is Kamala Harris. Trump is running against you. Vice President Trump. Guys, the wires up in his brain were all crossed. They were all mushed together. They all became Jell-O. They all became tapioca pudding. There was an entire structure in place to try and prevent moments like that from even happening. They were desperate to prevent the gaffes, but the big guy just became the ultimate gaffe machine. But this is going on from the very beginning. These vultures knew it right from the very start, but they pushed him back to later in the day. They pushed him to later in the day when, I don't know, when he wasn't so sleepy. Joe would become very tired if meetings went long, and he would even forget where he was. Again, Wall Street Journal reporting this from insiders within the White House, current White House, not in the past, current. This is beyond just being controversial. This is treason at the highest possible level. The holder of the nuclear codes couldn't make it through a basic meeting. And this right here is what we're talking about when we say that this decision had real and extremely dire consequences, because when members of Congress came to Biden to try and share concerns over the withdrawal from Afghanistan, legitimate concerns, they were trying to warn him, they couldn't even get him on the phone. And finally, confirmation of what we already knew, that the Biden presidency was in fact Obama's third presidency. Get this, we're not making this up. Read the piece. Barack Obama, former President Barack Obama, who I've said for the past 4 years is still the current president. Joe Biden is an actor. He's a puppet. Barack Obama, according to the Wall Street Journal, based on 50 sources inside the White House, Barack Obama was even involved in discussions and decisions behind closed doors at the White House. Boom. It's just vindication. It's just vindication because we called this out for years. Anyway, over 4 years, Biden held, get this, 9 full cabinet meetings. 4 years, 9. 2 a year, Bob. Just for reference, in their first terms, Barack Obama held 19, more than double, and Trump held 25, almost triple. And then, of course, there was the infamous Hur report. Remember Robert Hur? And in 23, Biden was questioned by special counsel Robert Hur about his questionable handling of classified documents, just like Trump was. Trump was being prosecuted. Robert Hur was questioning Joe Biden about his handling. But Biden was prepped for hours a day, for weeks. And according to the Hur report, Biden's energy levels were up and down, and he couldn't recall lines that were discussed with him by his own team. The actual interview didn't go well, and the report concluded with a recommendation that Joe Biden not be prosecuted. Why? Not because he didn't do anything wrong. Joe Biden wasn't going to not be prosecuted by the Department of Justice because he didn't break any laws. He was not to be prosecuted for having classified documents in his home because a jury was likely to view him as a sympathetic, well-meaning, elderly old man with a poor memory. In the limited press conferences, basically non-existent press conferences, Biden would answer questions sent to his team in advance, with the answers printed for him on note cards. And even that, the president still screwed it up. After the disastrous June debate with now President-elect Donald Trump, Biden's own party felt they had no choice but to force him out of the presidential race, that meaning Barack Obama. There was no way to deny the undeniable. The president's decline was just too obvious to everyone to deny it. Biden dropped out of the race in July, and the rest, as they say, was history. But here's the thing. This is far from over. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Kamala Harris, Jill Biden, Nancy freaking Pelosi, every single member of the Biden inner circle, his cabinet, they all knew. They didn't just know it, but they actively and selectively did everything in their power to try and keep it from the American people, to dupe you and me and the American people. Biden's been weekend at Bernie's for 4 years. The Wall Street Journal only tells part of the story, lifting the lid. We're going to expose that whole pot. The bigger part of the story is how in the hell these people could let a man with dementia sit in that seat during a time of major domestic and international crises, many of which he was responsible for himself. If this is the requiem for a presidency, it's a damn compelling one. We should all have serious questions about the immoral lengths a political machine on the left, the Democrats with the legacy media, will go in order to prop up a failed presidency. If this was an illusion of a presidency, did Americans also get an illusion of a 2020 election? After all, there were plenty of warning signs that Biden was in mental and physical decline, which could be seen during his previous election campaign. It was run from his basement, yet somehow that man, that declining man, 78 years old at the time, somehow he got a record 81 million ballots under murky circumstances, to say the least. Let's not forget that while we talk about a man in mental decline, he's always been an a-hole. His corruption knows no bounds. Think Hunter Biden's foreign influence peddling schemes for billions of dollars to the Bidens. The Chinese and Ukrainian foreign influence schemes were surely political operations that not only greased the palms of these deep state insiders, but it proved and provided convenient dirt to coerce Joe Biden into doing the machine's bidding. Yet Joe, if anything, is not so much guilty of being an ineffectual president as the media and his handlers are guilty of exploiting him in order to carry out a woke reign of terror against the left's enemies. Read that as Donald Trump and any conservative who gets in the way of their agenda. It was pure Machiavelli. Censorship of conservative voices on social media, and all the way to the brazen banana republic and now failed lawfare against President Donald Trump for the crime of running for president again and seeking to change the Washington status quo. The big guy, as corrupt as he is also the sad, pathetic, witless puppet of an evil machine led by Barack Obama, which was run by the amoral Democrat Party, along with its co-conspirators in the establishment media. This explosive piece by the Wall Street Journal is not just a condemnation of an imperfect man, as it is an indictment of an entire corrupt political system. And there has to be, and there will be, folks, there will be accountability. You can bet on that. All righty, folks, in the coming days, the Jets and the Giants will both take the field for what looks like yet another pair of embarrassing losses to come. Now, I'm a money guy, and I have one safe bet that I've been telling you all about since we started this show. In case you missed it, let's relive a little bit of it. Okay, a little bit of an offbeat truth bomb, but listen, about 4 weeks ago, I started talking to you guys about betting. And I said I bet every team that plays the New York Giants and plays the New York Jets. Well, in the 4 weeks, I just want to point this out. We're 7-1. We won 7, lost only once in those 4 weeks. I will continue to go forward. But guess what? We're doing pretty damn good since we started doubling down on that bet. I started this way back when. Get this, ready? We are now, every team that plays the Jets or the Giants since we started this show, and you're now 16 wins and 2 losses. Pretty darn good. The Giants haven't won a single game since we started this, and the Jets have won just once. My advice for this weekend is very simple. go right ahead and bet against both of those teams. Again, the Giants play the Falcons, who are fighting for a playoff spot. Atlanta will also be rolling out their rookie first-round pick quarterback for his starting debut during the game, a shiny new toy who's playing for their season, but also with something to prove. Good luck to you, Giants. As for the Jets, they have the Rams, who have won their last 3 and are also fighting for a playoff berth. The Jets have nothing to play for, and even when they did, they sucked. And I also tell you this, Drew, MD, our producers, what is the stat? The Yankees have won more games in the months of October up until now than the Jets and Giants combined. Think about that for a second. Think about that for a second. By the way, they're both, Jets and Giants, are looking for last place so they can get a decent draft pick. All right, folks, have a great weekend. We'll be back at it again Monday. If anything comes up with the weekend, always hit the tube, hit our YouTube, hit our Rumble page, or take a listen on Spotify, Apple, anywhere you get your podcast. And please share and subscribe the show. We're growing like triple digits over the last 2 separate periods, month 2 to month 1, month 3 to month 2, triple digit growth, over 205% the first time, and triple to get you a final number as soon as we end the month of December. All right, folks, have a great weekend. Bowling out Monday.